Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday evening, October 31st, and this is a little bit of a premature weather podcast, and this will be updated, but we do have something which is unique that is going on. It is the first time of the season, and therefore I figured that it's necessary to give the podcast now while it's happening. We have a couple things unique, but the number one thing right now is a snowstorm that has developed across West Nebraska, and the precipitation right now, according to some National Weather Service, is actually falling over East Nebraska. But anyways, the winter weather advisories are in effect for West Nebraska and parts of Wyoming. This area is very close to the Midwest, if not the Midwest. This is an area in the plains, so this hits pretty close to home, and it is the first snow of the season, if you want to call this the Midwest. Now, in terms of the weather pattern situation, and in terms of getting excited about when are we here in Chicago or even Minneapolis or places in the Midwest going to be getting snow, I don't think this is a system where anybody can get worked up. Any snow lover, I mean, the snow haters could rest, could still have menuchas hanefesh, and the people who don't appreciate the snow. This is not the classic snowstorm where you have an area of low pressure that comes out of let's say a Colorado low, or even better yet, a panhandle hook, or just a rinky-dink Alberta Clipper, one of those. This is just, I don't even know how to describe it. We have an area of precipitation. It's cold enough for snow. The jet stream has gone wild, and we have precipitation which has developed along where the jet stream is going wild, and there's enough moisture to squeeze out snow. Snowfall accumulations of 1 to 5 inches is what's expected in that area. Now, the other thing which just stands out, this is something that stands out when you go to certain weather apps and you look in the Chicago area, you realize it's not good enough anymore. It's not good enough to just put in Chicago, or if you really want to know what's going on, you have to cover a place like Chicago. You have to get a bunch of different counties. You have to get Aurora, Illinois, Evanston, Illinois, Waukegan, Illinois, Gary, Indiana, South Bend, Indiana as well. Certainly look up the forecast discussion for the National Weather Service. These things are working very slow tonight, so an update will have to be given. But the one thing that really sticks out is the fact that you'll notice how there's really no precipitation in the forecast. That's with moderate confidence. Here in Chicago, moderate confidence. When you get to the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, they have a high confidence. There's really nothing going on. There's nothing going on. The precipitation is staying far to the south. We do have something which has developed. The radar shows something happening over St. Louis, Missouri. Really, that's the center of all this action. And I cannot tell you right now if that's connected to the Nebraska situation or not, but that one is falling as rain. You see, the Chicago situation is a little bit tricky. It's not so simple. And we do have some forecasts indicating that a place like Aurora, Illinois might be getting snow. They might be getting snow. Okay, I know the crowd is really excited over here. But it might just be getting a few snowflakes, rain showers. This might be happening a couple times this week, but this is like precipitation that's getting squeezed out of a system that's really much further south than over here. But I want to throw in one little thing, however. So the Chicago National Weather Service has mentioned the possibility of also some precipitation falling in Chicago, but it's not going to happen because the air is so dry. The air is so dry that the precipitation will evaporate before touching the ground. Actually, that is what's going to be happening. This area of precipitation in Nebraska will be moving into Illinois, and it will be falling as precipitation, but we will not see it. We will just see the clouds because the precipitation will be evaporating before it touches the ground. In theory, they mention that if it would touch the ground, it's too warm for it to fall as snow. The only variable I want to throw in there is that because the air is so dry, there's major evaporative cooling going on, and perhaps we would get a few snowflakes here and there. Exactly what nights this would be happening, I will have to. This is going to be on a podcast later on. and it's nothing significant whatsoever. The computer models have gone wild for next weekend, and there's really nothing, they've gone wild, and as a result, the forecasts have really been reflecting climatology at this point, and not so much reality. Climatology probably will be reality, although now you never know. I want to make another comment over here. This is an Arctic air mass that's coming in from the Canada, from northern Canada, further north than usual. That's my understanding. And it's not coming from the North Pole, but it's coming down pretty close to the North Pole. And there's a very serious question that a person has to ask in a situation like this. I could tell you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Arctic air masses, even in a place like St. Louis, when you get an Arctic air mass this late in the season, we're about a month away from meteorological winter. An Arctic air mass, even for a place like St. Louis, you're going to have high temperatures in the 30s. High temperatures in the 30s, certainly for Chicago. And we're already in November, but we can count it as a late October Arctic air mass. And we're not going to be seeing those temperatures in the 30s. The forecasts call for high temperatures in the 40s. It's a little bit of a disappointment. So the places which are getting snow out of this, they're going to see highs in the 30s. And for them, this is an Arctic air mass. They're going to notice this being an Arctic air mass. What I want to point out is that this has been a pattern this year, and it really was taking place over the summer as well. We were getting Canadian air masses where one would think the temperature in a city like Chicago, after getting a Canadian air mass in July, high temperatures should be in the 70s, and certainly in August. But I remember, and not only that, I went back to the podcast that I recorded on it just to make sure that this actually happened. We got a Canadian air mass for a few days, and the temperature was never high. It was always in the 80s. It never dropped into the 70s, and this is in the month of August. And here we have an Arctic air mass coming in, and probably it's really almost like to call it Arctic is like mizalzel, the word Arctic. It's like not. I think a lot of the forecasters and feel that the word Arctic doesn't belong here, because then it's when we really get an Arctic air mass, which also feels like the Arctic, what term are we going to use for that? But the air mass, from my understanding, is coming from the Arctic. It's just the temperatures are a little bit warmer than usual, just like they were this past summer. And I'm just pointing that out, whether it's, that's my perception of the situation right now. So as of right now, although we have transitioned into a winter weather pattern, those words sound a lot more aggressive than what they actually are. And they've always sounded more aggressive than they actually are. Ever since I've been following the weather from the time I was 3 years old, transitioning to a weather pattern makes it sound like it's not just a few days of winter. It makes it sound like initially, it makes it sound like winter is here for a month or two. Then you realize, no, it means just 2 weeks. And then you realize, no, it means just 1 week. And now transitioning to a weather pattern doesn't even mean a week anymore. So, and maybe it never did. But we have transitioned. We're transitioning into a winter weather pattern. But nonetheless, we still do not have deep low pressure colliding with Arctic air, to my knowledge. If we do have that, it's taking place at the Texas Panhandle, and the precipitation is likely going to be falling as rain, but that's something which needs to be looked at, and if that is something that's happening, then that's something noteworthy for future forecasts this winter, which I will explain in Yirtzeh Hashem later on. That brings this podcast to an end. I wish everybody have a fun night. If you're out enjoying the night in the snow, and even if you're not enjoying it in the snow, and stay safe. And realize that, believe it or not, there are big warm-ups. Big warm-ups. The current thinking is for a big warm-up to happen for next week. At the same time, I am mentioning that there are 2 computer models which are forecasting a closed low to develop over the Great Lakes with possible snow. But nobody else is forecasting that. So for now, it seems like the warm weather might be returning. Yeah, I figured people would be excited to hear that. And we'll have a little niggin here in the background. The purpose of this podcast was not to inform anybody of anything, but it's to add passion and curiosity to the next podcast, which will be Im Yirtzeh Hashem, really informative. And we could enjoy the niggin.